Has anyone ever asked you if you're okay, if you're really okay? Well, I have. And this is the story about Hurricane Irma and how it came and it interrupted my plans, it broke open my spirit, and everything else that followed afterwards. And I want to focus too on how facing yourself changes your life and changes the lives of other people. So the story actually starts here in this lovely island of St. Martin. I was a student during that time, just about to enter into my second semester. And Hurricane Irma, as many of you may or may not know, was unprecedented and unexpected and very ferocious. I remember actually surveilling the campus the 2 nights before the hurricane, asking people if the buildings were secure. I think I was a bit dramatic, but I just wanted to make sure my life would be preserved. And I had never experienced something like that in my life. Uh, it came and it damaged a lot of things on this island, and it caused a lot of grief and anguish. And my point today is not to compare how I experienced it to other people, but to kind of emphasize how it marked a beginning and transition in my life. So again, going back to what happened, and I also don't want to focus on the damage. So it started actually this day, 2 years ago. I found myself in the British Embassy in New York City. So after being evacuated from the island, we had to then prepare to relocate overseas to the UK. And I actually remember sitting in the embassy and I was like, how did I even get here? I was looking up and thinking, wow, I'm sitting here waiting for a visa to continue my education. And prior to that, a year before, I had applied to medical school with the intention of seamlessly finishing 5 semesters here on the island, transitioning to clinical years in the US or the UK later down the road, not where I was in that point. But okay, just like Hurricane Irma, the storm came and went, and I had to go with the punches. Mind you, once I did receive those documents and I did arrive in the UK, I immersed myself in the curriculum. I did what I had to do. For many of you who might not know, we have to do clinical medicine curriculum as well as our basic sciences. So I got my housing, I got my registration, and I dove right in without even considering what I had just experienced. So upon arrival, I'll tell you, my friends and I had a good group of friends. We took advantage of London. We took advantage of being in England, and we took the trains down to London. We went up to Scotland and up to Edinburgh. We really enjoyed ourselves, enjoyed the tea and the scones. And then I remember actually watching the news. I will never forget, my friends and I watched the TV, and there were 2 storms that had formed in the Caribbean during that time. And they had actually formed off the same path that Hurricane Irma had formed off of and hooked upwards to go towards the UK. And we looked at each other like, this can't be happening. And so, again, I'm not trying to label myself as overdramatic, but I did pack a bag. I packed a bag real quick and I put it next to my bed. And my friends looked at me, but I was like, don't be mad. So after doing that, I started to understand that, okay, maybe I had experienced something that has impacted me more than I ever knew it would. But I still didn't process it. Fast forward, we completed that semester actually. So again, just like Hurricane Irma came and went, so did that semester. Now it was time to return back to the island. So our class, we returned, we did registration, took care of housing, and mind you, the island still was rebuilding. People were here, were still recovering. So just like the school, the whole environment was just still in a place where we were healing. But again, I immersed myself again into my school. I immersed myself into clinical medicine without even giving a thought as to the fact that I had traveled abroad many times, had to wait for suitcases, had to do this and that. And not in a complaining light, but just in a way to just explain all the steps that it took to come from here, to go abroad, and then to come back. I'm still blessed because I was still able to continue medical school. But I started to notice that things were shifting in my mindset in terms of not being able to sleep well, not being able to focus as much as I could have. And I started to sense something, but I really wasn't sure because school had been one of the areas that I'd always really excelled in. So I didn't really know. But then it was one day that I was actually here on the island in class, and I had a colleague of mine who came up to me and they asked me, they said, "Are you okay?" And I was actually kind of offended. I said, in my head, I was like, "Are you okay?" But then I still actually went home and I thought about what he had asked me. And when I went home, I said, okay, he asked me that. Didn't really understand, but I still cried. It was still a continual spiral there too. I continued to just go to school, go through the motions, just do what I did normally every day, which was what? Be a student. And then it happened again when I was walking outside of campus. I remember between campus and outside there's a cafe. And a professor came up to me and he asked me, he said, "Why don't you go home? Why don't you take a break? Why don't you relax a little bit?" Twice, I was offended again. I thought, was he trying to kick me out of the school? Did I not belong here? A really wrong mentality. But I still went home again. And I thought about it. And this time I asked myself, what is he seeing that I'm not seeing? And I cried again. But I still knew that something was happening. And you see, he was the beginning, that colleague and my professor. They were the beginning of the many mirrors that would enter into my life, that would show me who I was and who I was becoming. And I want to emphasize to you today that mirrors in your life are not just the reflection you look at in the mirror every day when you wake up. It's not just you looking long and hard and seeing what is happening. It's people in your life, your parents or the guardians over your life who have guided you, your friends, your true friends who know you in your darkest moments and who know you in the light and who aren't afraid to tell you the truth. Now, they weren't the only people. I had 2 friends who just said to me, "Tsitsi, you're not the same." And maybe it's because I wasn't cackling like a hyena, or I wasn't going out and just enjoying the sun, enjoying the beaches like I had wanted to do, like I had dreamt of doing after just studying hard, and because you have to have balance in life. And so each of these mirrors, and it wasn't just those people, by the way, it was even people back home who hadn't heard from me, who, when I did speak to them, they didn't understand quite what was off, but they knew something was off. And again, just like with Hurricane Irma, I don't want to emphasize so much of the negativity, but I do want to emphasize the process of it. And to make things a little bit more interesting, as that semester went on, even after all those mirrors were coming my way, I still ended up failing 2 classes. And I was crushed. I thought it was ironic that I had finished a semester after a hurricane and passed very well. And I come back where I have more resources, more time, more support, and I still didn't perform like I wanted to. And then even still yet, I still denied. Something was telling me you need to take time for yourself. But I still kept pushing. I said, no, I have to do medicine. I have to study. I have to do what I have to do. You see, when you're on the cusp of a breakthrough, that's when you'll feel a lot of resistance, a lot of crisis within yourself. And then it comes to a point where your body and your mind can't take it anymore. And so I had to make a hard decision to then leave school. I took a leave of absence after that semester. So I'm sorry if you got lost in between the chronology, but there was about 3 semesters between Hurricane Irma and when I had to take that time to leave. And then when I left, that's when I was able to sit with myself, face myself. I mean, really face myself, because there was no one around me to say, "Tsitsi, you're this, Tsitsi, you're that," or "let's go this direction." I had to really understand and look at the reflections that were given to me by people around me. I had to look at a reflection from heaven, a mirror from heaven that was begging me to love myself, to have faith in myself. And so this began a process of undoing, unconditioning of different thoughts and different mentalities that had not served me most of my life. So when I look back at Irma 2 years later, I think of it as a transition point of the person I thought I was to the person who I'm supposed to be, which still has weaknesses, still has thought processes that may not serve me, but still working in a way that I'm understanding where I'm going. And again, I want to emphasize the importance of these mirrors in your life, because without them, I would not really be standing here today. Without them, I would not have had the courage to come back and continue a dream that I believe is God-given. And it changes your life, because when you face yourself and when you face the things that have held you back, that is when new life springs forth. That is when you have the motivation. And I remember once I finally faced myself, and it was a process, by the way, a process of ups and downs, and it was ugly. And there were times that were okay, and there were times that were gruesome. There were times that were confusing and certainly uncertain. But one thing I knew was that this was the beginning of a life that I was always meant to live. One that is free, one where I don't have to be afraid of myself and afraid of what I'm capable of. I also noticed that when you face certain things like an unexpected storm like Hurricane Irma, it doesn't really just come for you. I think we sometimes like to make things very, very personal. But we all go go through things, and they're not just for each of us, but for other people. Because I noticed once I took that initiative and once I became fearless in challenging myself, my former self, everything started to open up. I started to meet people who had gone through similar things. I was counseled. I started to, when I traveled, different conversations or TV shows or movies really highlighted some of the things that I was experiencing. Some of it could be attributed to post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of it could be attributed to my just self-denial or resistance, or even just some things that I had been struggling with in childhood. Regardless, I started to meet people who were reflecting something to me, but I think I was also reflecting something back to them. It deepened relationships that I already had in my past, and it allowed me to be more courageous to take new relationships with other people. I also saw a difference in my schoolwork. I had an invigorated passion for medicine, and not just because I need to know it in order to help a patient, but because it was vital to understanding my potential to hold that information and then to spread the knowledge. I realized that whatever I'd gone through with Hurricane Irma was a trigger, a catalyst for this change, so that if I bump into people, I can share my story and not be afraid. Because and what I learned too is like being open is really the foundation of a full life. I learned through Irma, through all the changes we had to go through all the things we experienced, that I was probably bent forward and backwards to the side and about, but I was not broken. And that's why I want to emphasize how, again, facing yourself is just absolutely tantamount to everything that you want to accomplish in life. It is not easy. It is not something that I would wish upon somebody, but it's something I encourage that when the situation or the circumstance comes, you don't instead run from it, you face it. Again, it's not just for you, but it's for someone, a colleague. It's maybe for a family member, for someone in your life who is looking for a sign, a glimmer of hope that they too can accomplish or acquire the knowledge and breakthrough that you have. So again, it's been 2 years, and I can say that I was presented, and I still am being presented with a lot of mirrors of reflection. But this time, I'm not afraid to just admit when I've fallen. I'm not afraid to admit where I need improvement. But I'm also not afraid to acknowledge my strengths. I'm not afraid to acknowledge the things that make me me. Because I also realized that being me was all I needed to do. When I kept denying myself, denying my health, denying the people telling me, Tsitsi, you gotta work on yourself, take care of yourself, that's denial to myself. So I learned that part of this journey is not in focusing on the things that come your way, but how you are supposed to fight back against it, how you are supposed to rise above it. But that comes again with facing yourself, so you can face it all, challenge the world, and challenge who you were the day before. I am finally me, and I am finally okay, and I hope you are too.